everyone, my name is Tiffany and I'm going to be covering chapter 9.6 as well as chapter 13.2. First we're going to start off with chapter 9.6, which talks about cohesiveness and diversity. And specifically I want to lay out what those two components are when related to a group or an organization, and then I'll talk about how they can help the group to increase their overall effectiveness and efficiency. So when we talk about cohesiveness, we're specifically referring to the degree to which members within that group are attracted to one another as well as motivated to stay working in that group. Now, studies have found that cohesiveness and productivity are related and that they do often go hand in hand. However, the degree to which they're related is often dependent on the group's performance-related norms. And I'm not going to go too much into that, but I do want to say that groups with higher cohesion often have more efficient management styles. They're able to come to a decision much more quickly, and they usually have group members that stay within that group for much longer periods of time with reduced turnover rates. In order to establish or increase greater cohesion within a group, there are a few different things that the group can do. They can establish group goals. They could make that group a lot smaller. If it's a really large group, cohesion is going to go down. If it's a smaller group, it's safe to say that cohesion will increase. Or you could stimulate competition among other groups or with other groups. So if you as a group become or stimulate competition with other groups, then within your group, you're going to increase the cohesiveness among members. The other topic presented in this portion of the chapter is diversity, and this specifically talks about the degree to which members of the group are similar or dissimilar to one another. And the chapter talks about a lot of different ways that diversity can actually decrease group efficiency, but one of the ways, or a handful of the ways that it can increase group efficiency and group effectiveness is that increased diversity often leads to increased creativity as well as increased open-mindedness among members. So often groups that are really high in diversity, although it might take them a little bit longer to come to a decision, they often have fewer mistakes and they often come to a much more solid and sound and reliable decision than other groups that perhaps spend a little less time debating because they have less diversity among their groups. Excuse me. Moving into chapter 13.2, this talks about the different bases of power, and specifically I'm going to talk about the 3 bases of formal power as well as the 2 bases of personal power. So when we talk about formal power, we're specifically referring to coercive power, reward power, or legitimate power. Coercive power is probably one that we're most familiar with. If you think about your mob boss movies, when someone can coerce someone else to do something by threatening bodily injury. And that's a really sort of extreme case. In most organizations, that's not going to be the case. But coercion definitely relies on the targeted individual's fear of a negative result from failure of complying. And that can be a physical bodily injury, or in most organizations, it's going to be threat of suspension, threat of docked pay, or even sometimes threat or fear or worry that they may have to do really unpleasant tasks because someone has coercive power over them. That brings us to reward power, which is basically the opposite of coercive power. So when we talk about reward power, an individual might be influenced by someone else that has reward power because they feel that this individual can provide them some sort of positive benefit. This might be in the way of pay raises, bonuses, personal recognition, any sort of small accolade, or even paid time off. And then lastly, when we're talking about formal power, we have legitimate power, which is most common in organizations, and this represents the physical authority that an individual has, the authority they have to control the organization and control the distribution and allocation of resources within that organization. And again, this is one of the most common forms of power within formal power and within most organizations, which is your legitimate power. Then we move to two types of personal power. So we have expert power as well as referent power. And expert power is just that. It's the power that comes from someone that has a special set of skills or a special background, experience, or a large plethora of knowledge. And when we think about expert power, we often will think about doctors, mechanics, physicists, people that you would go in to interact with them, and you would assume that they have more power in that situation because they have the expertise. Then we have referent power, and this is perhaps more relatable when we think about idols or social media moguls, where someone might be interested or influenced by them because they like an individual, they respect an individual, they admire them, and thus they want to please them. They want to do right by them. They want to be seen in a positive light in their eyes. So I hope that gives you a brief understanding of Chapter 9.6, diversity and cohesiveness, and how those two go hand in hand to increase group effectiveness, as well as Chapter 13.2, the formal bases, or the 3 bases of formal power and the 2 bases of personal power. I look forward to hearing your comments on the lesson objectives and to watching everyone else's presentations. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good day.